When you write your Java programs, if you keep the classes in the same directory or in the same project folder, then they are considered staying within the same package, and that is going to be called the default packages. So classes, if you have multiple classes in there, in the same default packages are implicitly imported into the source code files. When you write your import statements, then generally you would not have to write the entire path name. You just bring in or write the import statement at the very top of your program, and that would allow, that's the library that you're bringing in with an import statement, and then you can basically start using the methods thereafter. However, if you want to write the total path name or the complete path name of that library, then you would not need to have that import statement at the top. Let's look into declaring some private variables. This is something that you will see being used a lot when you write your classes. When you write a private variable, then you would generally need a public method to access it. This slide shows a pictorial way of how you can create a private variable, in this case name, and then you are creating public methods called getName and setName to access that particular variable. We will also see that in Java how we can create a constructor. Java by default would add a constructor to your program if you do not create or declare one constructor. So let's take a look at a program with a constructor. So here is an example. This is a class called account, where we define a private string name. We then create a constructor. So constructor is line number 8, public account, and this particular constructor or this particular account constructor would accept a variable which is of the string type. Now note that the constructor is a special method and would always have the same name as the class. I have the body of the constructor, which allows me to take the parameters that I pass when I create an object out of this constructor and put it in the private variable that I had declared earlier. I also declared two public methods. One is setName, which would again take another string variable and assign that value to the private variable, and I also have a public method which would return a string value, and I'm returning the name variable. I already talked about default constructor and writing a constructor. So if you write your own constructor, there's no default constructor. Another important thing is the constructor can never return any values. So you would never have a constructor that is returning any value. If you see something like that, it's an error. Let's take a look at an example. So now I am creating an class, and I generally try to come up with meaningful names, account test, or sometimes they call, you will see them being called as running account, which designates that this is a class that would have the objects that are created from another class, and in this case this is the account class. So this is my blueprint of a class that I created, and in this one I'm creating objects called account1 and account2, which are of the type account. As you can see, I'm going to use the new method or the new statement to create my two objects and pass two string values. And if you go back to your constructor, remember this constructor would accept the string value. So now the value that I'm passing is now assigned to the variable name. Okay, so then I can easily write a system out printf, associate my account name dot and my public method. Account name or object name dot public method, and this is what it's going to return. In your UML diagram, the constructors are written between these elements, and I'll show you what they mean. So here is a pictorial way of showing the account, the class account. This is the UML diagram, Unified Modeling Language. The first compartment shows the name of the class. The second compartment shows the variable. The minus or the negative sign denotes that this is a private variable. You have the elements, which denotes the constructor, and then you have the public methods, again shown by the plus signs. So set name and get name. The set name would allow a string variable to be passed through the method, and get name would return a string value. That's how it's going to be shown. You can also have other data types, in this case float or double, and the difference between float and double are the precision points. And here's an example where we basically added some more private variables. So private double, okay, and then this is the variable called balance. My constructor that I'm creating has a different signature. The previous one only had one parameter. In this one I have two parameters. One of them is a string, the other one is a float. I'm taking the value of the string that gets passed and assigning it to the private variable called name. And for the balance, I have a little if condition. So any balance which is a positive balance greater than 0, I will then take the value and store it in the balance variable that I had defined earlier. I can create more methods called deposit. Again, same thing. If I have a deposit of more than 0, I do not take anything which are negative values. Then I'm going to add it to the balance. I can also write a get balance where I would return the balance, and remember double denotes that I'm going to get a double value back. I have a set name and a get name, and then I can create another account test. I pass in, or I create these two objects, pass in values. Remember I created my constructor which would allow me to pass two values, Jane Green and 50, and another string and a value. But remember, since this is a negative value, this is not going to be setting up in my default balance. Okay, this would, 50 would, because I have a if condition. And then I would use the system out print line, and the format is object name dot the method name, object name dot the method name. Okay, so continuing on, making it user interactive, I have this input scanner input, and then I would let the user set some value, input some value with the next double, and then adding it to my account. More of system out print line, allowing the user to input more values, set it up, and then again my accesses are with the object name dot the public method name. This is your output. This is your output. When you write, you're asking them to input some value for account num, input some values for account 2 and then showing the balance. We can also have other data types. In this case, it's showing float, and this is a way of formatting your float output. So by saying 0.2f, I'm showing that I now have, or my answer is going to include 2 decimal points. If I don't assign any initial value, the default value for a double is going to be 0.0. The default value for an integer is going to be 0. Here is your UML diagram for the account, name, balance. Remember, these are private. And then you have your constructor, and then all the public method names. We also have other data types, Boolean, byte, character, short. Remember, just like your default values, you also have your Boolean initially set to false. Last but not the least, we can also use graphical user interface with the Java FX. So these are all the things that we can do with the GUI. Here is an example. With the Java FX, this is how it is going to look. You're going to see the library, the containers, the controls, and you can basically drag and drop anything from here into the GUI IDE cell. And then you'd also have properties, with the labels that you were going to bring in, and those properties you would be able to see through the inspector section. Here is an example. I brought in label. Okay, this is how it is going to look like. I can control the font, the color, the writing, everything. This is another one. Welcome to Java FX. I can add a virtual box or VBox, and this is my full folder or full output. Remember, this is nothing but a picture that gets imported into this GUI box. Pretty simple. Hopefully, this would give you a good understanding of the class, private methods, how to write simple classes, how to create new objects, and then how to associate that object with the public methods and extract values from them. Thank you.